Welcome to the Revolution of Purpose podcast. I'm your host, John Street, and each week we bring you conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and individuals who have aligned their life with purpose and created extraordinary results.
So I'm going to live through it and accept it radically with grace and hope and love.
I would be proud to be in this council.
It was an honor. I had so much fun.
Tune in every Monday for the Revolution of Purpose solo show and every Thursday for Revolution of Purpose Conversations. Welcome to another episode of Revolution of Purpose Conversations, the show where we sit down with people who are helping others discover who they are, why they're here, and how to create a life of greater purpose and fulfillment. Today's guest is someone that I'm really looking forward to introducing you all to. Adam Avinas is a mindset, manifestation, and human potential coach who works with entrepreneurs, business leaders, sales professionals to help them create extraordinary breakthroughs in both business and life. His work brings together neuroscience, quantum physics, identity, and practical coaching to help people break through those internal limitations that often keep them from living the life that they're truly capable of creating. And on a personal note, Adam is not just someone that I admire professionally, but he is actually my own mindset coach. I've experienced firsthand the way that he challenges people to think differently, see differently, and ultimately to become different. I'm excited for all of you to hear from someone who has had such a meaningful impact in my own journey. So Adam, welcome to the Revolution of Purpose podcast.
Thank you, John. I'm so excited to be here. And, it's really cool that you're bringing people on to have a conversation, people who are flowing in their purpose. Because when I met you, I really challenged you on what would you really want to do with your life. And hats off to you, because you actually are someone who takes coaching and runs with it. You've made so many changes in your life. You are flowing in your purpose. And you're also helping a ton of people do exactly that too. So it's a beautiful kind of culmination of where we've, grown to and where we're at right now with all of this, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is a little bit surreal. I know when we first started working together, Adam, and at the time I was a sales director for a flooring company. I was in real estate. I had a wholesaling business in real estate. I was doing a lot of wonderful things, but they weren't my purpose, and it was so important when you asked me, what do you desire your life to look like and what do you want to do? And all I knew at the time was that I wanted to use my voice. And so I had started posting on social media but I had not yet envisioned the podcast, the book, Revolution of Purpose, all of that. And one of the exercises that you gave me there was to list 100 ways that I could use my voice, that I could flow in my purpose. And the idea for Revolution of Purpose was actually number 101. I listed all 100, and after I put my pen down, it took me several days to do it. I just was having quiet time, and all of a sudden I saw in my mind #Revolution of Purpose. And that became the book that I wrote. It became the coaching program that is still, to this day, my flagship mindset coaching program. And it became the very podcast that now you're sitting on right now. And I mean, I have chills talking about that and thinking about that, how, oh my God, what manifestation is that? I'm sitting here on a call with you then, talking about how I've had this idea for Revolution of Purpose and how I saw it taking off, and now I'm on a podcast by the same name that's growing so fast and interviewing you. So thank you for challenging me to go past my 100 ideas. Thank you for challenging me all the different ways that I could use my voice and finding my own purpose.
Of course. No, I'm so happy we're here. And, I say this all the time. When it comes to this stuff, it really is greater than us. Right? I have people come to me all the time and they say, Adam, you changed my life. And it's not that I did. I facilitated you going within to connect with what you are meant for. That's all that happened. And that's what we're experiencing right now. We're literally actually experiencing an idea manifested in physical form through this conversation. And so it's an exciting thing.
That is amazing. And even this very podcast, we had a coaching call. This podcast is a little over 2 months old now. I think we're 9 weeks in, and it's growing so fast, and I'm so thankful for that. But I think it started with a conversation about 4 months ago where you asked me on a one-on-one call, John, is there something that you're supposed to be doing that you're not? And I was like, yeah, I'm supposed to launch a podcast. I just didn't think I had time to do it. And you're like, well, then do it. Like, I don't have time is a limiting belief. And it's one that I think that we let control us in a huge way. So many people do. But it's just not true. We all have the same time. And we're tapped into a limitless potential of time. And then we could go even deeper about, time not being linear and all this other thing. But we do have time. We just decide that we don't,
100%. And, it's such a great, image for other people to see, because it all just has to do with the ideas that you accept. And when you accept ideas of limitation, of not having time, that becomes your reality. If you accept that you're going to make this podcast work no matter what, the time will make itself. It will find itself. Your mind will rearrange whatever automatically to make it happen.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's beautiful that you accepted that idea, and that you were actually okay with being challenged, which is what happened there, to be able to accept what was trying to come through. Because that's another big thing. I've realized from coaching thousands of people now that a lot of times people won't change unless they're challenged. And to the people who get in the rooms and are willing to be challenged and then actually do something with the awareness that comes, those are my people. And that's why you're one of my people, right? You're the best for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's the truth. I've realized the same. The people who can't accept coaching or being challenged are not going to change. Like, they don't desire to change enough to allow someone to speak truth. Like, with coaching, it's so important for us to put a mirror in front of someone's face. If I use that example so much, but if you don't like your reality, you have to change yourself. If you don't like what you see in the mirror, you have to change yourself. You can't change the mirror. And it's the same with reality. And I think in coaching, that's so important. And you did that for me and continue to. So I'm very appreciative of that.
Good.
I have a question that I ask everyone that appears on this podcast, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer to this, Adam. Who are you today that your younger self would be proud of?
That's such an incredible question, and I'm sure it's so exciting getting to hear the various ways people answer that too. There's so many things that come up for me when I hear that question, but I would say the number one of all is I'm the person who shows up for myself. And it sounds so simple, but it's actually one of the key things that has created the life that I live right now, the fulfillment, the happiness, everything, truly. That one character trait has been a result of millions of dollars, as an example, right? Of making millions of dollars. And it's because when I was younger, I was someone who would constantly back down in the face of fear. And I think a lot of people do this too, right? Where maybe you endeavor for something different, or you start moving towards what you actually want. Or maybe you're just still living in your same programming, but as soon as something gets hard, you kind of shrink back. It's like this contraction that happens. And that was something that happened to me for years. If I wasn't feeling right, I would call in sick for work, and I would shrivel up, kind of shrink back to my smaller self. And at a certain point in my journey, I just made a commitment that I was going to show up for my higher self, as my higher self. I was going to show up for what I really wanted and not allow myself to shrink back down when things get scary or uncertain or overwhelming. And that's who I am today. I'm the kind of person who, that 1 week that I just had was a really great example. In 1 week, I did 2 events across 2 cities on next to no sleep. And a few days later, my beautiful baby boy was born. And I was on my coaching calls. I was still running those calls from a boardroom just outside the hospital. I show up, and that's continued to compound, not just in my own life, but in the lives of everyone that I'm able to touch.
You do. You definitely exhibit that trait. Like, you show up for yourself and for your clients. I can remember when I first started working with you, you were in Italy, I think, for maybe a month or so, and I even asked, I said, "Do we need to reschedule your calls for when you get back? Like, I don't want to take your time." And you're like, "You don't understand. I'm living a life I don't have to take a vacation from now." And that resonated with me. That helped me see the possibility that I could create a life that I love so much that I don't have to take time off from it, you know?
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And you know, it makes showing up a different thing. Like, I don't have to force or push, right? Like, I've created a life that I'm enthusiastic about showing up for. And was that a product of years of inner work? For sure. But like, you know, it's different and it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. And congratulations on Everett William, is that right? Everett William Avinas.
Yes.
So to you and to Kristen, congratulations. I'm so excited for you guys, both of you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned, the life that you're living now, and people, they may see where you are today, but they don't always see the journey that got you there, So tell us a little bit about your story and what led you into this work specifically.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I love talking about the story too, because you're right. Like, people can see some of the lifestyle or, even who I am and how I show up, like we said, but they don't see the harder times, the harder decisions, the fear, all of that. And the truth is, when I first found this work, I was, as I said, someone who didn't show up for myself, but I was also someone who didn't realize how bad my mindset was. I would have never pegged myself as someone who was cynical or, who looked for the worst case scenarios. But as soon as I met my first coach and I was asked very confronting questions, I realized I had a very poor image of who I was in my mind. I had so much scarcity and was ruled by so much fear. And it was a real wake-up call for me because I didn't even know it was in there. So I met a Bob Proctor coach when I was young. I was working in real estate. And she just changed my life. This material really just changed my life. It allowed me to see what was operating underneath the surface. It allowed me the tools to actually change that. And when I saw my results change as a product of rewiring my mind, things it became undeniable. Things just changed so fast, and I just leaned in more and more. And, I went from using this work to triple my income in real estate, to, building a software company, to getting to this point where I knew in my heart that if I could spend my time doing anything, it would be through sharing this material, coaching, and everything. And that was after a decade of, getting coached, of going deeper, of learning neuroscience and quantum physics and reading deep into spiritual texts and all of these things. And what's funny is, even after all of that, I still was at the point where, even though I knew I wanted it, I questioned if I needed to prove more. And I think everyone can find themselves at that point, right? Do I need to prove more? Like, do I need to do more before I can actually just step into what I'm meant for? And the question is no. It's just accepting it for yourself. And I made a lot of, scary decisions along the way. I'm going to be very open about that. I invested in coaching and invested in myself when I didn't have the money sitting around in a bank account, right? I leveraged credit and did what I had to do. And that was the start, or the transition of, other things, or me with my poor mindset into an incredible mindset, an incredible business, multi-7-figure business. And it's only getting better, truly.
That's amazing. So would you say that your own self-work, helping you find your potential, sort of then woke up inside of you your passion for helping other people find their potential?
Oh, 100%. I got to this point, I'll never forget. I was in my condo. I had created a life that I had once wanted. It was the dream life at one point. And I just felt so depressed, and I didn't know what was going on. And it was because I had used this work for achievement only. And achievement of what I thought success was. It wasn't my own definition. And so I got to this point where I felt empty. And when I started to look at that, I said, okay, well, I have what I want. I got everything that I thought I wanted, right? So why do I feel unhappy? And it was because I was fulfilling someone else's definition of success. I never actually stopped and asked myself, what my soul wanted, like what I really wanted for my life. And when I did, there was a voice that was very loud and clear, which you've experienced too. That voice that just tells you exactly what you're meant to do. And it was scary. And it took a lot of courage for me to even face that voice. And that was the moment where everything really changed in my life. If I could say there's two moments, the first was meeting my first coach, just becoming aware of this work. And the second would be when I faced that there was a voice within me that was calling me to a different expression. And when I actually listened to that voice, everything changed, and I knew I had to share with other people how to actually tap into and listen to that voice as well.
So what do you call that voice?
My higher self, the intuition, the higher power, infinite intelligence, God. There's many different ways to look at it, but I think the key understanding within that is that there is an intelligence, there is a power greater than we understand ourselves to be that knows more than us. And it is purposeful. It is here to experience something specific. And that's why achievement can feel empty if it's not connected with that higher guidance.
One of the things that I think from day one resonates with everything you do, like the coaching calls we've had, your group calls, one-on-ones, your masterminds when we, come together for conferences, all of that, is that everything you talk about through manifestation is based in service. It is not just accruing wealth for the sake of accruing wealth. And I think that's what you're hitting on. You're like, I was living the dream, but you were missing your purpose in that dream. And it's hollow. Like, I feel like success without service is hollow.
I 100% agree. And, if we're talking about aligning with our soul level self, right, our higher self, I think every human somewhere within there, like your soul has a desire to serve in some way. Your soul is, for connection of some kind and making the world a better place. So tapping into that is a soulful thing, 100%.
I agree totally. So one thing that I love about your coaching, and I'm trying to not fanboy, but I'm just like, here's all the things I love about Adam of Venus's coaching, but it has just transformed my life so dramatically. And I wouldn't be hosting this podcast, I don't believe, had we not worked together. And I just realized, hey, whoa, I should be doing this. But one thing that I love about your coaching that's been life-changing for me is that you don't just help people accomplish their goals, you help them become someone, I don't even want to say different, you help them awaken to their highest self. And so a lot of what I do is identity-based coaching, and a lot of my podcasts recently have been on this importance of identity. And so let me ask you, how would you define identity?
This is such a great question. And, it really taps into that we as beings, as spiritual beings living a human experience, truly, we exist on three different planes, right? We are spiritual in nature, as we just touched on. I think everyone can kind of come to an understanding that we have a soul or there's spirit, like that is the true essence of who we are. There is also the mental plane, right? We have thoughts, we get to choose those thoughts. There's thoughts and emotions, there's an internal, and then there is the physical plane. And so what people don't understand is, yes, you can tap into your intuition and listen to what spirit is calling you to, but your mental and physical body is still conditioned to, a belief really about who you are or about how this world operates. And so if you're going to ask me about what identity is the mind and body's idea or concept as to who you are. And that comes with character traits, that comes with emotions, that comes with, what you believe you're worthy of or capable of, how you believe results to be produced, how you think people respond to you, all of these different things. It's really a concept you've accepted as to who you are. And why identity is so important to understand in the paradigm and understanding that you have to rewire your mind is because we can tap into spirit and get information as to what we're meant to do. You can, just like you did when you faced that there was a higher expression of creating a podcast for you to do. it doesn't mean that your current programming is set up for that already. There might be resistance. You might be questioning if you're capable of that. You might be questioning whatever it is, right? There's different narratives that have to do with that concept of yourself that you've accepted. And so we have to do the work to rewire who we believe ourselves to be in alignment with what we receive, in terms of intuitive downloads from spirit. And what's interesting is the identity is always going to be expressing itself. So whether it's aligned with your spirit or not, let's say it's misaligned with your spirit, it will express, your body will display and express the identity. It won't express spirit, it'll express the identity. That's why we have to create that alignment of our identity with the higher calling of what spirit is really truly trying to evolve us into, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So when you talk about like our identity is, and how sometimes our identity is not aligned with our highest self, would you say that's become, well, I know with the paradigm of thinking that we get in, stuck in so many times, why do you think people get so stuck in their paradigm? Why do you think that so many times people get so stuck in their own stories, and even when these stories are limiting us of where we could go?
I think it starts with that most people don't realize that they're just living through stories. They're just actually, fully engorged in the experience of their story. They don't realize there's anything else outside of it, right? They've convinced themselves that that's truth. And, just to give an example to that, I had convinced myself or accepted a narrative that the only way to experience success was to suffer. And so I just lived in suffering, thinking that that was going to bring me to success. And so I didn't know any better. And I think that's where it starts with a lot of people, is they don't know any better. Now, the next kind of stage or step to that is you become aware of it. Maybe you meet John Street and he gets to, show you exactly what's holding you back. Maybe you listen to this podcast and you actually wake up to some of those stories that are there. Now, just because they're there doesn't mean you know how to rewire them. So that's almost more uncomfortable, if anything, when you're aware of the illusion, but you're still living in the illusion. That's hard, right? And so then that next step is learning how to rewire it. And when you learn, I would say it takes a process, and it takes people working with someone like yourself or myself to actually really understand the process to rewiring your mind and rewiring those narratives to live into different experiences that you can create. That's like the process it takes, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So you mentioned how uncomfortable it gets. Would you say that the most people, that by the time that they found you in coaching, do they have this sort of thing in common where they've gotten to a place that it's just really uncomfortable because they feel stuck? Like, and I don't know the percentage or how many, like it could be. And I mean, I've got some clients that don't feel stuck. They just want to go to the next level. But I would say the vast majority of people that work with me are people that feel like one of those cars you have as a kid where you pull it back and then you let it go and it just takes off, except they feel like they've been pulled back, but they can't let go. Do you see that in a lot of the folks that you work with?
That's such a good analogy. I love that. And yeah, 100%. I would say there's two things I see, is either people who know that they're stuck, or there's people who just know very deeply within them that they are meant for more, that they want, the next level, and they don't know how to really approach that, if that makes sense. So sometimes it doesn't have to be like from the negative of being stuck. It's just from the positive of wanting more and knowing that guidance will get them there faster.
So this is kind of a good segue into neuroscience, because I know you've spent a lot of time studying neuroscience. And what does neuroscience say about getting unstuck? Like, what does it lend us when creating lasting transformation?
That's such a good question. And, I would say neuroplasticity is the best place to start. To those who've never heard the word neuroplasticity, it's essentially the understanding that our way of thinking can actually change the structure of our brain. So what does that mean? It means that if you were to think in a new way, it allows your mind to therefore actually like create structure around that way of thinking so that it can, move that way easier. So I'm going to give a really great example, and I think that this will help a lot of people. let's say that you have a cabin in the woods that you grew up going to. Your parents took you there, they owned this cabin in the woods, and you walk outside, you walk up to the forest, and they would take you on this walk in the forest. And over time, they stamped down the grass, and they threw the branches out of the way, and they created this beautiful trail through the forest. And you grew up just going up there, and you see the trail, and you walk through that trail in the forest. Now, this becomes automatic. This is neuroplasticity. If there's a path that is, your mind is used to going on, it makes it very easy for it to just continue going on that path. Now, what ends up happening is maybe you become an adult, and you realize maybe you want a different experience. Maybe if you were to walk up to that path, you can create what's called the mindfulness gap, where you become aware of your narrative. You don't have to actually go into the narrative. You become aware of it. You create separation between you and a thought. And you say, you know what, rather than going down this same way we've been going, what if I walked that complete other way through the woods? What if there's a beautiful lake or a waterfall? There's some better experience that we just haven't allowed ourselves to explore because we're just used to walking the same path. And so what happens is, that's the mindfulness gap, is first just stopping and creating separation between you and an automatic way of thinking or being. The next step is to actually go that different path, meaning think that different way. Choosing a way of thinking, of course, that is conducive to what you would really want. And the first time you walk that different way, there's going to be resistance. It's going to be hard. There's going to be the grass that you got to trample down and the branches you got to throw out of the way. But if you keep choosing that new path, what ends up happening is the old path grows over and it becomes harder to go that way. And the new path slowly becomes the automatic path that, in this example, the brain goes to. And so this is an image of neuroscience that I continue to come back to, because I think it really paints the picture for people that they do have the choice. And if they create the gap and then consciously choose, eventually that new way of thinking will be the easy automatic way, and the old way of thinking will become harder over time.
Mm-hmm. And some people may hear that and be like, oh, well, that sounds kind of woo-woo. But not only is it not woo-woo, it is used every day in addiction recovery. If you've ever known anyone who's gone through addiction recovery, this is something that they do in rehab. Like, if you can get rid of the triggers that are causing you to always take the same path, and this is how you rewire your brain. So you break habits, you break addictions. It's the same thing. So I know people often hear the phrase, your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. And that's something that, I heard Bob Proctor say, I've heard people say that. Can you unpack what that actually means, and how visualization and emotion are actually working together to help us reshape our brain?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So it's the subconscious mind in specific that can't tell the difference between, physical reality and something that is vividly imagined. And the reason that it can't tell the difference is because the subconscious mind is the feeling or emotional mind. So if the subconscious mind is the feeling or emotional mind, it is basically, you're just imprinting the emotions of the experience onto it. And then that's what it dictates as truth. So the cool thing about this and how to use this is, your subconscious mind is always basically going to look for proof of what's been imprinted on it. So this is why, going back to the example we used before, if I have imprinted the emotion, the narrative and the emotion onto my subconscious mind that success requires suffering, then my mind is automatically filtering all of reality and looking for proof that success requires suffering. And therefore, my mind is automatically actually creating the experience of suffering, because it's looking to experience suffering so that I can get what I want. So this is interesting, because to your point, then we can use that understanding to actually create a different filter through which we see everything through, and therefore a different reality. So now let's go to the opposite of that. If I want to experience an ease with success, I realize it's just a narrative that I need to suffer for success. And so I realize that I want to experience being successful beyond my wildest dreams, and for it to feel easy and like flow and like serenity. Now, if I were to go into my mind and visualize in vivid detail what that feels like, it's the emotions that we need to tap into. You have to remember that, as you called out there. So if we were to go and experience that in our mind, we will start to actually feel the emotion of what that can feel like, of success feeling easy. And our subconscious mind not being able to tell the difference, it's just feeling the emotion of that success can feel easy. And then the reticular activating system, which is that part of your mind that is finding that proof, is looking for and filtering reality for that proof that success can be easy and feel like flow. And then it's actually pulling us into that experience, identifying and accepting those opportunities that do feel like ease and flow.
And so the more we do that, the more we get to manifestation, which is, people are like, how do you manifest? Well, that's it. You change your paradigm, you flow, you change your emotions, and all of a sudden you start to make decisions that match the life you wish to live instead of what you've been in the habit and condition of living. So manifestation is, it's such a buzzword, of course, but a lot of people hear the word manifestation and they think, oh, well, that means I wish for something and it's going to come to pass. But I don't think that's exactly how it works. What do you believe is maybe the biggest misconception that people have about manifestation? Please pardon me while I interrupt your podcast episode with a quick message. If you're enjoying today's episode, can I ask you one small favor? If you're watching on YouTube, just please take a second to hit that little bell and subscribe to my channel. Hit the like button and share this. Share it with someone who needs some encouragement today. Also, if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, I need your help there too. I would be so grateful if you'd follow the show, leave a 5-star rating and review, and share this episode with a friend. These simple actions make a tremendous difference in the growth of this show. They help these conversations reach more people who are searching for hope, searching for purpose, searching for practical mindset tools that will transform their lives. And if you're looking for even more motivation, mindset strategies, and purpose-driven content, I would love to connect with you on social media. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at John Street Official. Also, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. Just search for John Street. And then one last very important thing. If you've ever found yourself asking questions like, why am I here? Am I living my purpose? How do I get unstuck in life? How do I take my life to the next level? Then I would love to invite you to schedule a free clarity call with me. Let me be clear, this is not a sales call. This is not a coaching call with someone from my team. This is nothing pre-recorded. This is a real one-on-one coaching conversation with me. And together we will explore where you are, where you want to go, and what may be standing in your way. My goal is simply to help you gain greater clarity, direction, and momentum in reaching your goals. To connect with me, to schedule your clarity call, or to learn more about the Revolution of Purpose coaching programs that I offer, please visit johnstreet.org or reach out to me on any of the social media platforms I mentioned. And now, let's get you back to today's episode.
So the biggest misconception that I think people have about manifestation, it's funny, but people think it's woo-woo. But like in its simplest terms, manifestation is simply having an idea come into physical form. And that's done everywhere. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this episode, this podcast is an example of manifestation. It started as an idea. You ended up committing to it and then moving out into the physical form where people could go on to Apple or Spotify and find it and listen to it. And it's become something real that is actually distributed through the physical world. So that's all it really is, right? That's all manifestation is. If anyone's saying it's woo-woo, well, look at any company in the world. Any product, anything you see started as an idea. So anything that you can see that is man-made is simply a manifestation of someone's idea.
We're all sitting in a building that was a manifestation of someone's idea. Or for you sitting outside a building, but still, yes, exactly.
Exactly. So I think that's the biggest misconception. Now we can take it to any different level from there. I mean, the depths we could go with this topic. But I think if you start there in its most simplest terms, then there's nothing really to, deny anymore, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I think a question that I get asked a good bit about it, especially people who are really new to mindset work, is where does manifestation end and personal responsibility begin? And I feel like they're saying, where do you get out of your head and do the action? But I feel like when you ask the question like that, you're missing the part of it that you have a personal responsibility to envision it before you take the action. It's not like you envision it and then take action or it doesn't work. You have to do all of it. It can't just be the action as responsibility. Like, that's such a hustle culture way to say, well, if I envision it but I don't work 80 hours, it's not going to happen. Like, where is that? I guess at some point you have to start trusting spirit, source, the universe to come to play. Would that be kind of what takes it out of that hustle culture, work 80 hours to make it happen mentality?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's the understanding that all you have to do is accept the idea, and the movement comes as a byproduct of that. So, the example of, I always give people this example. Let's think of it this way. Let's say there's someone who's in a sales role and they have, a hard time making cold calls, right? They just have so much resistance towards it. Well, their belief isn't there. Because look at it this way. If you believed that if you made a day's worth of cold calls, you would make the kind of money you want to make, if you genuinely believe that, you'll put in that day's worth of phone calls, right? If I gave you a list of 10 people and I said, one of these people is going to give you $1 million, you just have to call them. You would call them because the belief is there. So if there's a lack of belief, there's internal work that we have to do to move into that. Now let's look at it in another layer, because this is something I experienced. Let's say you're actually doing the thing and you're putting in the calls, you're doing the work, right? But let's say you're not seeing the results. Well, it's the energy you're showing up in that produces the results. If you have an identity that is rooted in that you are not the kind of person that people will take seriously, it was my thing back in the day, then why would someone say yes to you? They're picking up subconsciously that exact level of energy or confidence, and then they're going to believe the same thing. So I think at its root, not only will, the internal or spirit create the movement, meaning if you accept an idea, the movement will happen. Of course you took actions to make this podcast happen. The belief had to be there first. And then when you move into that actual action or that movement, it has to have the right energy behind it. Otherwise, there's no point. You won't get the results. And again, we could go much deeper, but just there alone should show people that it all works together. And you have to be looking at the internal or energetic or spiritual side of it if you really want the results that you want.
Absolutely. So would you say it's fair to say you can't really create a different life without being willing to change who you are as a person?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Like, I literally had that written down as a question to ask you, and I'm like, well, you just answered that question. I mean, it's absolutely, it can't be done. But this is a good question that kind of feeds into this. So where does quantum physics come to play in all of this?
Oh, there are so many levels to that answer, but I'll start here. I think this will be a good way to explain it. So in quantum physics, they have proven that the world in which we see, the physical side of this, experience, is actually 99.9999% energy. That's what it is. That is the physical plane that you experience and see. And so what you have to understand is, within our reality, almost everything is actually energy. That's what everything is. We live in a universe, a world full of energy. And that energy is made up of infinite level of vibrational frequencies. So matter, what you can see, is the slowest form of vibration. That's why you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it. Whereas there are infinite levels of vibration and frequency that we're not tapping into. We're going very deep here. So now with that understanding, what's very good for, I think, people to know is that you can tap into any of those other frequencies that exist in the here and now. They are right here in our universe. All of these different frequencies exist. And if you change your vibrational frequency, your thoughts and beliefs and who you believe yourself to be, you're actually able to tap into some of that other information. Now, why does this matter? Because the information of any different life that you want to fulfill exists right now in energetic form. So just like your podcast, there was a higher vibration sitting just outside of your level of awareness that was saying the next iteration of Revolution of Purpose and everything that you want to flow in is a podcast. And now you accepting that actually allows that idea to come into you. What does that do? It starts the flow, the channel of information on that vibration. So you will continue to attract more awareness, more information that's on the vibration you accept. So if you accept the idea of a podcast, guess what? You're going to start thinking of the name, of the people that you want to have on it. You're going to attract the opportunity for those people to come on it. You're going to think of, all the other things start to come into play because there's information that's existing on that vibration. Now, quantum physics is a very deep topic, and there's even infinite, more depths to that. But in its most basic form, just the understanding that we have access to all the information that would allow us to create any kind of life. It just starts with accepting even the first bits of that vibration. That's what allows the further ideas to be attracted from that vibration, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. But for people who maybe it's a newer subject for, and they're like, oh my gosh, what, you just lost me. Why, this is so woo-woo. I love to use the example because you talk about frequency. Mm-hmm. And we have energy that is seen and energy that is not seen. So it's not a question of if that's true. We know it's true. Turn on a radio and it's true. Turn on your microwave oven and you have microwave frequency. Turn on your television and satellite images come in. Like, you have things that we cannot see that become existing things to us. And so there is an unseen out there. And that's all basically you're saying, is that we have what we can see, but there is a vast amount of unseen frequencies that we can tap into that is available to us, right?
Oh, exactly. And I think I'm happy you brought up the radio, because I think it's a great, easy example to come back to. It's just like a radio. If you change the dial, you tune into a different actual stream of information, what happens? The song changes. You change to a different channel. And the unseen becomes sound in your living room, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just like that. That's all it is.
It is. And if you don't like what you're getting on the radio, you change the frequency to another station. That is literally what life is with this teaching. If you don't like the reality that you're seeing, you've got to change your frequency, which means rising to a higher vibration of yourself, awakening to a higher version of yourself to be on the frequency that matches the reality you want to see.
Yes.
And it sounds woo-woo, but it's really just absolutely, it's just real. I mean, it is, and I wasn't familiar with it when we started working together. And my life has so dramatically changed through even being open to it. I mean, I came from the Christian faith is what I've been raised in, and so that's what I know. And so I had to work through, well, what about this or what about that? But I realized so much of what I've learned through this type of work is actually talked about in the Christian faith and talked about in other ancient traditions. Like, there is so much power. The scripturally it says God gives us the desires of our heart. And then another scripture says that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And then another scripture says in the tongue is the power of life and death. So right there, from our heart to our brain to our words, we can speak the reality that we desire to see. I mean, if we can speak life and death, there is no other greater thing we can speak. And so, I mean, you find it in the Christian tradition and in Muslim tradition and Buddhism. It's all in all of the ancient teachings, ancient religions, the inscribed above, the interest of Delphi. I think, therefore I am. I mean, it is all right there. We just have to accept it and shift our frequency to match.
Exactly. And I'm so happy you brought it around to that too, because, if you start becoming open-minded and exploring and seeking, you'll see it everywhere. And when you can get to a point where this is just how it all is, when you can actually accept that this is just how everything is, and then it's up to you just to apply it, that's what will actually allow you to become willing in a new way to create that different life using the proof that's all around us already.
That's huge. So let's take it to something practical and doable. Let's say someone is watching or listening to this, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Podbean, or you're watching on YouTube. What is one exercise that someone could start doing this week that will begin changing the way they think and help them help them awaken to their highest identity?
I love this so much. And I just wrote an article that I've not even released on this. So this, the guests listening today, this is going to be the first place you hear it.
Love the synchronicity.
It's so good. It's so good. So I think, it starts with allowing yourself the permission to dream, I think. And that's how you're going to really, utilize this work and see it come to fruition, is with permission is where it starts. And I think, one way to give yourself permission to dream without power is with a question called what if? What comes after that? If you could have anything, or if there's something you feel you're meant to do, I want you to just ask yourself the question, and you can write it out. You can go pen to paper. What if it did all work out how I wanted? And you could put down anything. Maybe it's a podcast, right? Maybe it's a completely different career. Maybe it's 3xing your income within your career, whatever it is. What if this was my reality? What if it all worked out how I wanted? Whatever comes after the what if. And just write it all out. See what comes up and allow it to flow. Now, the second question that I think is very important is, what if it takes the pressure away, so to speak, right? You're just kind of exploring. You're just curious. Now, the second question that I think you need to ask yourself is, why not? So if you write out, what if it did all work out how I wanted and I could triple my income in the next year? And you write out what that would be like. You explored it. You gave yourself permission to explore. The next thing I want you to write is, why not? Why can't you? And what it's going to do is it's going to give you awareness, because it's going to show you firsthand whatever narratives are there. It doesn't matter if you think it's logical. Oh, logically, people don't make that much in my industry. Logically, the market's bad. Whatever it is, those are all narratives, and that's what you have to understand. The amount of people who said that you can't make the kind of money I make teaching this work, it's all narratives. It's just what other people have accepted as true. I know that I don't have to accept that. Right? Mm-hmm. So then ask yourself, why not? And see all of the awarenesses that come up. And as they come up, what I want you to do is I want you to actually switch them into what you would want. So if you say, what if I tripled my income? And you write that out. And then you say, why not? Whatever excuses come up, write the opposite. Well, because the market, why not? Because the market is in a bad place. Well, what if within your market, you can create your own economy, and you can create a service that people would want regardless of the economy? And as you start to change each of those narratives, you are slowly conditioning yourself to actually be able to accept that you can triple your income. And when you accept that you can triple your income, it's starting to move into form already. It is already starting to happen. You are already attracting the ideas, the awareness, the people. Your mind is identifying the people, identifying the opportunities, all of that, but it starts with accepting it. And in my opinion, this is one of the best ways to actually accept it.
That is huge. I wrote it down myself. I'm just I'm going to do that exercise myself. And you should totally do this exercise, not only because of what you could uncover from it, but also to break the habit of what if being a negative statement. A lot of times the what ifs are horrible. It's like, what if this goes wrong? What if, blah, blah, blah. But I love this. What if it does work out? What if this really does happen? And why not? I mean, what if I do triple my income doing something I love and I'm passionate about? And why not? I think that's huge, Adam. That's amazing. So I have a lightning round that I'd like to go into. I hope you're ready for it. But I'm doing this week's lightning round a little different than what I've done in the past for people who are watching the podcast. I actually want you to complete a sentence. I'm going to start it, and then I want you to kind of complete it for me. So We'll have several of these in a row.
Okay, I like this.
Complete this sentence. Success is.
Whatever you want it to be.
I love that. Failure is.
Just awareness or learning lessons.
Oh my gosh, because everything's working together for our good.
Oh yeah.
Love that. Confidence comes from.
From understanding your true human potential.
Fear is.
False evidence appearing real.
In addition to Revolution of Purpose, the book, one book everyone should read is.
Love this. The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard is where I'll start. I have a lot there, as you know. There's so many that I want to recommend, but I'll start there.
Neville Goddard is such the OG. I love him.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really do. Not my favorite. Yeah. Last of the lightning round questions. One lesson that you wish you had learned 10 years earlier.
I think it's what a lot of what we talked about here on this episode, that whatever you accept as your reality becomes your reality, and that we have the ability to choose the ideas that we accept.
Absolutely. I'm so thankful you did learn that, and I'm so thankful that you're using your voice to help other people learn that same lesson, because it is empowering, it is freeing, and it's important work. So I'm so thankful that you're doing that, Adam. Before we wrap up, I do have one final question for you, and this is something that I ask everyone that appears on this podcast, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer. What is one thing about purpose that you believe most people are missing?
I think this is so good. Purpose starts personal. It starts with a desire, it starts with an excitement, it starts with something that lights you up and makes you want to explore something further. But purpose really isn't about yourself at the end of the day. I think it's when you realize that your purpose is meant to serve others. When you understand that the reason you have a desire is because there is people who are meant to be changed by whatever it is that you provide. That, I think, is the key. And it's allowed me, at least, to get out of my own way, because whenever I want to play small, I realize that's so selfish to play small. Because it's not about me, it's about the people who are meant to experience whatever reason I desire to serve in this way.
That is so huge. And it's almost counterintuitive. Playing small is seen as selfless. But if you're called to be big and use your voice and get out there, it's being selfish, because you're letting the fear of what others think or all those limiting beliefs keep you from shining that light. And no man is an island. There are people who are going to need the light that we shine. I liken our purpose to a lighthouse. I mean, we don't know who is lost at sea that needs to see what we're going to shine their way. And it's that important. I mean, it really is that important. It is life-changing work.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's everything. It's everything.
It is everything. Well, Adam, this has been such an incredible conversation. I appreciate not only your willingness to come on the show, but also just the investment that you've made in my own life. I am so grateful for your friendship, your coaching, and the way that you challenged me to think differently, and just for coming on and sharing your light with the audience of the Revolution of Purpose podcast. It means the world to me. I'm so glad.
Of course. I will say one last thing.
So I'll put this in the show notes as well, but where is the best place for people to connect with you or to follow you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram. Instagram's the best place. We're pretty active on there. So that's where.
And I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you about to say before I just talked over you?
Oh, I was just going to say the one last thing I just want to remind everyone is that, it's bigger than you. It's so much bigger than you. I think this podcast right here is bigger than us, right? We're here. We're meant to be here for a reason. Everything has a purpose. And so I just wanted to end on that note, because I think it's important for us to hear consistently and repetitively and actually remember and operate with that.
Absolutely. That's how we change our paradigm of thinking, is repetition of thought and emotional catalysts. That's amazing.
Yes.
To everyone listening, thank you so much for joining for another episode of Revolution of Purpose, especially these conversations episodes. I hope that you get as much out of these as I do, because I certainly love these conversations episodes. If this encouraged you, if it challenged your thinking, if it gave you a new perspective, please do me a favor. Please like, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, share this episode with other people who need to hear this teaching. It is life-changing teaching if people will be open to it, so I hope that you'll do that. And remember, your purpose is not something that you find. It is something that you awaken to, that you become. And until next time, keep living your own revolution of purpose. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode encouraged you, if it challenged you, or if it helped you see your life a little bit differently, would you do me a favor? Subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating or review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Every share helps us reach more people who are searching for hope, purpose, and a life of greater meaning. And if you're ready to stop wondering what's next and start living with greater clarity and purpose in your own life, I would love to meet with you personally. Visit johnstreet.org right now to schedule your complimentary live purpose and clarity call with me. Until next time, remember, your purpose is not something you find. It is something you awaken to, and then you choose to live it. Go make today another step in your own revolution of purpose.